and welcome back to day 4 of the National Film and Animation School with Francis Taaffe. Hello Francis, how are you doing? Please could you introduce yourself to the young people and what your role within the industry is?
I'm an art director, working in film and TV, specialising in drama. So I don't do game shows or documentaries and stuff like that, so it's just pretty much drama.
Cool, deadly. And what does your role consist of?
Well, the art director in the art department is the second command in the art department. So above me there's the production designer, who's the HOD, designs the show. And then there's me, and then there's everybody else underneath me. So I sort of manage the day-to-day running of the department. And I manage the schedule, the work sort of schedule, assigning roles, hiring crew, managing the budget.
Oh, that's fun stuff.
Yeah, anything else that needs to be done. It's just sort of corralling all these maniacs.
Cool. And did you always have an interest in film and art, or was that an afterthought?
No, always. I mean, I went to art college because in Dunleary Art College 30 years ago, I did the foundation course. So you do a bit of everything and then I applied for the graphics, the fine art, and the film course, and I got onto the film course. So they must have seen something in me that this guy's best suited for film. So I did film. I didn't finish the course, unfortunately, because I'm not very good at academia. And then, what did I do? I specialised in editing when I was in college. So after I left college for a couple of years, I sort of worked as an assistant editor on a few short films, then went to work for a company called the Courtyard Studios, who supplied sort of video services for the film industry. This is back in the analogue days, when things were shot on videotape or on film. So film cameras used to have a little video camera in the viewfinder, and you would take a feed from that into a tape recorder and a monitor, and so you could play back what was happening on what the camera was seeing. So that was my job for a couple of years. Worked in a few big shows like Reign of Fire, King Arthur, and stuff like that. And then what did I do after that? I ended up in Galway working in Roger Corman's Concord studio. And then I was pretty much art department full time. I'd always done a little bit, dabbled in the art department, like designed a few short films and the like.
Yeah.
But up to that point I was doing a bit of everything, bit of camera, bit of editing.
Cool. And you said, like we had been talking before this, about how you were always arty when you were younger. And like how did you navigate that space then, coming just to empathise with the young people that are watching, trying to figure out if that's an area that they wanted to go? Was it always like steady passion?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, when it comes from like playing with Lego, playing with Star Wars figures, and making like little sets for the figures. I mean, I still do that today. Just before I was here, I was looking at Lego for my nephew for his birthday. Yeah, I was going, Jesus, I want to buy that set
for yourself.
Yeah, no, I have some in my office at home. But it's Lego and making sets for figures and stuff like that, and I still do that. That's what I do today, but it's just on a much larger scale.
Yeah.
But it's like creating worlds. Mm-hmm. Just that's a way of controlling the world in a way, putting things in order.
Good. And you said you did an animation art course. So what did that it was dabbling with quite a few different kind of art forms and stuff, but how important was it for you to get that foundation in a couple of different areas?
Oh no, that was brilliant. I don't know if they still do that sort of course.
They do,
the foundation course. We do a bit of everything.
Yeah.
Because everybody in my class, about 15 or 20 people in my class, and all of us when we came in, nobody knew what they wanted to do in their, for the rest of their life. So those people who went through that interest in one thing and came out as a sculptor, or as a filmmaker, or as a radio producer, or a writer, or comic artist, or who knows.
Yeah, it must have been helpful as well, especially rather than jumping into something so niche, that it gave you time to explore.
That was crucial for me. That just to sort of finding where your true interests lie, like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And being in the art department, who are you in contact with most, and how important is that communication?
Well, I mean, the designer, my boss, the designer, obviously, and then everybody else in my department. But then we're dealing, particularly in pre-production, with the director and the producer and the DOP. And then as the film goes on, I'd be the conduit for everybody else in the crew to the art department. So everything goes through me. Yeah. So I once the film is up and running, I'm dealing with everybody on a day-to-day basis, basically.
Does it ever feel overwhelming, or?
No. Strange enough. I mean, the art department is the biggest department on any show. So you're not just there on your own and stuff, you know what I mean? So, there's a lot of people you can rely on, and you're sort of delegating and handing the jobs out to other people, so you're not sort of carrying the whole show on your shoulders. I mean, the director would be the same. You know, there's the notion that the director makes the film. They don't. They're just one part of the chain of things get made. So, I mean, and a good director just relies on his crew to make the film for them. I mean, I've been on shows where the film is made despite the director.
Yeah.
You know, everybody just gets on doing their job, like, and the best directors have the lightest of touches.
Yeah. And
they guide you along, like.
We're discussing that importance of delegation as well, and how that kind of can make or break a project and the process that you go through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was I saying about that? Yeah, it's all about delegation, certainly the art department as well. My job, I can't do it all myself, and the designer can't do it themselves. Like, so you're sort of down this chain of people, you're relying on the people below you to get the job done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And all films are structured like that. Like, so I mean, you have the writer and the producer and the director, and then everybody else below them.
Yeah, that stand out. And if there is any questions from any of the young people, don't be afraid to throw it into the chat, and I will be able to forward it on to Francis. But with that ability to curate a world, how, when you receive maybe a script and you're in conversation with the director, how do you pull what it is that you need from them?
Sometimes with great difficulty, because some of them aren't great communicators, to be fair, particularly first-time directors. But it's just talking, constantly talking. Particularly in early days of pre-production, myself and the designer, and maybe the DOP if they're around, and the producer will just sit with the director and constantly meet, and we talk about everything in the film. We talk about actors' backgrounds, or the cast's backgrounds, the characters' backgrounds, because that'll help inform how we're going to address the sets. You know, what are they into? You know, what's their life experience been up to this point?
Yeah.
But we talk about everything in minute detail. Like, it's quite maddening. Like.
And is it difficult to capture in your head if you're trying to develop this world and this set for maybe even if it is directed for a specific character, say a character's bedroom or something, to not have so many things racing? How do you pick out the best from that down to the finer details?
Some of these things, when you get a script, you may not be into the material itself or what it's about and stuff. So you're always looking for some little thing to hook you, you know, to pique your interest. Like, so you sort of feed your bit of your own interest into it as well. Yeah. So you would suggest to the director, well, maybe the director, or maybe the character is into this sort of thing or something. You know what I mean? The director's job is there to sort of stop you in your tracks if you're completely up, but going the wrong way. But it's just about, when you read the script, you get an initial idea what things are about. I mean, a good script will sort of set the scene, and it will tell you who the characters are and stuff. You know what I mean? If you're sort of fighting to find out what the script is about, or who the people are about, or what they're, you know, you're in trouble from the get-go.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
And if the director has to sort of explain things to you, it's like, how are we going to explain all this to the audience? You know, if it's not in the script, it's not going to be on screen, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, I mean, it's generally there and stuff, but a good director will rely on us to bring in ideas, you know, things that interest us or things that we just sort of stumble across, you know, happenstance. I mean, films they're an organic sort of thing. They evolve. The best films, you know, they're all there on the page, but they're a starting block. You know what I mean? And they evolve. That's not to say that there isn't scripts that are, you know, they're all there day one. You know, you know, and things, and you make them as they're written. But most things evolve because you're sort of, decisions are taken out of your hand a lot of times because of money, you know, your budget or lack of budget, and your schedule, you know, because of the weather, things are compromised. You know, scenes that were planned to be outdoors, so they're suddenly indoors. So now you're sort of now dressing a set that wasn't due on camera for 2 weeks down the line, and suddenly has to be up the next morning. So, you know, so you're cutting corners.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah.
It's an organic thing. That's the important thing. That's
yeah, an organic process.
Yeah.
And what stage do you come into a production? So a project is being made. When are you contacted, and when are you?
Almost day one.
Yeah.
I mean, myself, the designer, and the art director were usually the first hire. I'm usually number one on the payroll.
Woo.
So we'd be on from day one almost. I mean, sometimes possibly location manager would be on before us, scouting locations, but sometimes, you know, we're the first person there.
And what's your relationship then with like a location manager and sussing the locations for a project?
Well, we brief them. I mean, again, the information needs to be in the script. If it's not, then we're briefing the location manager what they're or scout what they're looking for, and the director's briefing them as well.
Yeah.
You know, so we've all got, like, between the designer, myself, and the director, and possibly the DOP if they're on at that stage, we've got an idea of what we're looking for, we're pitching our ideas, and then we just, location manager then will bring in some idea or some places he scouted. We'll go, that place looks right, let's go look at it.
Yeah.
You know, and if it works out logistically, if we can afford it,
Yeah.
you know, that's how those sort of decisions are made.
Yeah. And is there any kind of projects that you've worked on recently that stand out for you, Francis? In around maybe a project where you kind of got to enter the world or things happened very organically and you were on top of it? Like anything stand out over the last couple of years?
Well, Dairy Girls, I suppose. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of the most successful things I've worked on.
And what was it? What made kind of Dairy Girls? Did you expect the kind of eruption that came out of Dairy Girls?
The script was very good to start with. It was very funny. I mean, I can remember the day when we all got our scripts and we're sitting around the office, and each person sitting in each corner of the room, and you'd start bursting out laughing at certain things at different points. Like, and then you go, oh, they've got to that page. Which is very. I've never had that in a film before or a show.
That's special.
Yeah,
to
it was
that.
that funny on the page, and we, as we do with every job, we did the best we could with the money we had, and it worked out. It was a great cast, great crew, great director, great writer. Just all the things just magically fell into place. Like you very rarely get that.
Yeah.
And quite rightly, was successful because of that.
Because of, I suppose, like something that instigated that much humour from the onset, like that.
But it was all in the. I think it all came from the script. Like, if the script wasn't as good, would they have all brought the best game to it? Because people did. Like, and then, we didn't have a huge budget, like, but.
Yeah, and a theme that's come out through the week, Francis, as well, about kind of the dynamic of getting casting the right crew and having everybody working kind of in tandem together, is when everybody's passionate about the project.
Yeah.
And have you seen that through, like, within the art department on different projects, of when there is that passion? Or
rarely. Not every script you get is as good as Dairy Girls.
Yeah.
That's why that sounds in my head. In 25 years in this business, I've had that experience. That's why that stood out. But I mean, yeah, it is a job, and we all have to make a living and stuff. And sometimes you take things that you don't think are very good, but you have to take every job. A friend of mine describes it the best way: you take the first bus that comes along on the film game. You know, you don't sit around waiting for Ridley Scott to phone you. You have to take that. You know, it could be some silly little short or something that you think it is.
Yeah.
But I've always found as soon as you get it stuck into a project, you find something that interests you in it, and suddenly you're hooked and you're obsessed and you're into it. You know.
Yeah.
So if you're not into the project overall, you find some little aspect of it that, you know, here's an opportunity to learn a new skill, or to work with some people I haven't worked with before, you know, or making new friends.
Yeah.
So I mean, every job has been worthwhile at the end of the day. It just at the time may not have seemed like it was, but.
Yeah, and that ability to jump from project to project and not falling with lack of motivation, because there will be projects that we'll be more passionate about that will come along, but taking, as you said, like, as a learning opportunity.
Well, I'm passionate about the process more than the actual projects, if you get me.
Yeah.
I find it very hard to watch shows I've worked on. I know a lot of actors who can't watch themselves on screen. I can't actually see my work on screen.
And do you think that's a common thing within the art department, that
I don't know.
Of people being passionate about the process? Because I know art.
Oh, absolutely, yes. I think anybody involved in film it is the process we're all passionate about. Like, so sometimes, you know, the jobs just aren't the best, and nobody sets out to make a bad film or a bad TV show, but it just happens. There's just too many variables in the day to be dealt with successfully, and no one has enough. There's never enough money or enough time. Yeah. So things go awry, you know. That's I mean, one of the best things when crews get together, we exchange war stories, and the best stories, the best anecdotes are the shows that went wrong. Yeah. They are the funniest stories, like.
When things begin to crash and burn a little bit.
Yeah, but you know, like, look, everybody always pulls together. That's the great thing about film people, they just pull together and they get over the finish line. No matter how bad it was, the experience. The shows always get made. I've never been on a show that didn't happen for due to the crew, or, you know, not doing their job. That never happens.
And another thing we had briefly spoken about as well, Francis, is the importance of networking. So a lot of projects which you've done in Ireland itself over the the number of years, you've kind of probably crossed paths with the same people again and again in pockets of the country?
It's a very small industry. I mean, it's a small country to start with, but yes, the film industry, it's like a family. There is thousands of us out there, and we do seem to know each other. But that's the most important thing, and particularly getting work and getting yourself established. It's building a network is the most important. A network is just initially just your friends, people who have similar passion. You know. That's what I got from college. That's the one thing I got out of college was like the beginnings of a network. That's sort of led me to where I am today. And every job you do, you're widening that net. Yeah.
And would you have any tips for that process? Say, if people might feel a bit more reserved or...
Well, here's the thing. I'm actually quite reserved. I'm not a gregarious person by nature at all, you know.
Yeah.
My perfect night out is me sitting at home on my own watching the telly.
Yeah.
You know, but I get something out of films and TV that it's the idea of being in a gang, sort of a close-knit sort of community, like another family.
Yeah.
And when I'm talking, I sound like confident enough talking about what I'm doing, but if I have to talk about other things in other situations, I'm not a confident person at all. Quite reserved, quite shy.
Well, it just kind of shows like even to be able to make and explore and create doesn't require like a big robust voice to be.
No, exactly. And I do every day surprise myself. I could be on the floor of a shoot shouting the odds at 20 or 30 people older than me with more experience than me, but because I'm the boss. And I get away with it. Yeah. And I always constantly surprise myself that is that you?
Who was that voice?
Yeah, who was that person?
There's a couple of really good questions coming into the chat here. Oh, so a question from Luke was, do you like making realistic sets or fantasy-esque sets? Do you have a preference?
I don't often get the opportunity to do science fiction or fantasy. I mean, I've done a few shows like that, but it's mostly realistic sets. But a realistic set, there's as much work goes into, you've got an empty space, an empty studio floor. I mean, I'll probably show you some examples. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we'll jump over to our examples, and we'll go to our first one there, living the dream, and we'll be able to, if you could just maybe discuss them, that'd be great. So we'll jump to the first one there, please. That's all good.
This is a terrible, terrible drawing. But I've thrown it in. I've just these few slides I'm going to show you now. It's just to explain how a set evolves. So this is for. I'll give you some background. This was the second series of a show for Sky One called Living the Dream, which was about a British expat family who moved to Florida to run an RV park. So they shot the first series in America. And then when they came to the second series, they moved the whole show to Spain because it was cheaper. But we had to recreate a set that was built in America. But they had a bigger budget, and because things were cheaper in Spain, so we could enlarge the set. So this was the first sort of little doodle or thumbnail sketch I did of what the set could be. And actually, if you look at the one on the bottom left, it's actually very close to what the finished set was. And I did dozens of drawings after this, more elaborate ones that took more time. But what it came back to was that was the drawing that the designer liked.
That's mad.
So if you want to go into the next still.
And especially for it to be a hand sketch, like you just did, like it was a free sketch.
Well, every design starts with a sketch.
Yeah.
Oh. So there's the picture there.
We're doing a little fade in, fade out. But it starts with kind of the initial sketch. And is that something that like a producer or a director can latch onto, the idea of something?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't show those little thumbnails to a director or a producer because that was literally me on a spare piece of paper.
Yeah.
But that evolved then into this is a SketchUp sort of 3D render of the final sort of design.
Wow. And how many people, would that still be in your head? Something that you're trying to translate across?
Well, the great thing about this SketchUp program is you can send those files to the director or the designer and stuff, and they can then rotate them themselves. It's a free piece of software. I mean, I'd recommend everybody, if you're interested in the art department, to learn how to use SketchUp.
SketchUp.
SketchUp,
Cool.
yeah.
Somebody might pop that in the
Could
chat
even be
for the young people.
sketchup.com, I think. But it's initially it's a free piece of software. The more there's a paid version of it which you can actually draw plans from.
Cool. But
So
you don't need the premium to
No,
start
absolutely.
off.
I don't have the premium myself because I do all my drawings. If you go to the next slide, I think.
You go to the next image. Perfect. There's a small delay.
That's no,
So-
but yeah, there's a little delay.
Cool.
So I'd go from the SketchUp and then I didn't draw this plan, I'd assist them through this one. I would draw an architectural drawing based on the 3D model.
Okay.
So I work very traditionally. I mean, I'm learning SketchUp myself. I've only been using it for a couple of years. So I still draw myself on the page, and I'd like my assistants to draw on the page as well. So we draw the plan based on the 3D model, and then if you go to the next still,
We popped to
which
the next
is the
one.
set being constructed.
Okay. And how many people were involved when it got to the construction of the set?
I think it could have been about 30
Wow.
carpenters. I mean, we build everything in wood generally, still. You know, it's old school, like.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this had a steel platform that it was built on because it was quite a heavy set. But yeah, wood, and then like from wood we can turn wood into like metal, or make it look like metal, or stone, or any. But it's like, yeah, the world all around the world, sets are still basically built in wood, and it's just the finish would give you the. I mean, even if you look at science fiction films, those sets are all made from wood.
Yeah.
You know, it's
That's
just
incredible.
whatever the last skin or the last coating is, whatever it may be, plastic or fiberglass or something like that. But
Yeah.
underneath it, it's all wood.
Where do the sets go afterwards?
Unfortunately, they always go on a skip.
Oh, because my next question was sustainability, but like
Well, if you go to the next still, there you can see the final set.
the final set when it's all created.
Yeah.
And do some sets stay like up anywhere or on any projects you've been a part of?
Well, there's some stills I'll show you now later on. There's another set that I built for a show last year, and we're about to do the second season of that now in a couple of weeks. And the set is still on the stage where we left it. Because it was
Amazing.
cheaper to actually rent the space and leave it standing rather than strike it, store it, and then put it back up again.
Okay.
So that's the final set for this thing. So if you going from that little thumbnail to that sketch, that took about 3-4 weeks.
What?
It was a very quick turnaround.
Amazing.
Very, very quick turnaround.
And that was like you were talking about earlier, was it's timelines and schedules and budgets.
Yeah, that's what dictates things, yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got a gun to your head most of the time, like, so you just have to get the work done. But like they were an amazing crew, the construction guys in Spain. They started by building the spaghetti western sets in Almeria in southern Spain.
Wow.
So that's got a touch of that.
It does, yeah. A feel of it, all right. There's some questions coming up here. Ooh, a question from Connor. How much of your job did you learn on the job versus in college?
Probably all of it.
Cool. And is it just the kind of nature of the job as well, kind of hands-on experience?
It's a training situation every day, like, so the assistant art director and the trainee art director, they're training on the job, every job they do. I mean, I would never probably have the same assistant or trainee more than twice on a job, because there's so many people out there and the next person will come on.
Yeah.
So, but every job, yeah, you're just constantly learning.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've done a lot of jobs over the years where I said yes to a job on a Friday and then learned how to do the actual particular skill over the weekend and then blagged it for the rest of the job.
And there's a discretion, like there's always, you should be doing a bit of blagging.
Absolutely, like, yes, yeah,
Yeah.
of course, like, yeah. I mean, don't outright lie that you know, be honest. But if you've got, the first graphic design job I got on a feature film, I dabbled with Photoshop, but I was no expert. I certainly didn't study it in college, and I'd never done any courses. So I was sort of self-taught, and I said on the Friday, yeah, I can do that. And then panicked over the weekend, but got the manuals and taught myself the basics. And then as I was doing the job,
If I
you learn.
progressed into that.
And I'm still learning, like, I
Yeah.
don't know my way around all these packages and stuff. But, you hire people who can do those sort of skills. So, I mean, as an art director, you need to sort of understand everybody's role. So that's why I'm sort of constantly trying to sort of pick up little bits of scenic painting or construction, or sculpting or model making, all those sort of skills. I mean, I'm no expert, but I understand all those processes, so I can supervise other people's work, if you get me.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were saying when you get trainees into the space and stuff, you don't require them to know everything.
No, absolutely no.
And they can come in on the first day. Yeah, know what's happening.
No, but the one thing, best thing about trainees, if they admit what they don't know, that's great, because then, you know, you can teach them.
Yeah.
But like film or the art department it's school. You know, it's a training situation, like, you know, and jobs are long enough. You know, 3 or 4 months in an art department. You know, after one job, you'll have a smattering of experience. You'll know the general way we do things, like so.
Yeah.
And then it's, you know, it's just up to yourself. Then every job to sort of skill up, and the person who comes to a job with the most skills gets hired generally.
Yeah. And what are the key traits that you look for in trainees within the art department? Is there a key trait across all of them that you're like, this is what we need in the space? Or
You have to be able to drive.
yes,
It's the most important thing in the art department. You know,
Yeah.
I was a late comer to driving. You know, I was in the business for 5 or 6 years before I drove. But like, you know, as soon as I drove, my job opportunities increased tenfold.
yeah,
And I would say that to you know, today, learn to drive. But what was the other thing?
just the key traits of people going in. Like, what are you looking for?
Just somebody who's very curious about how things are done. People are willing to learn skills.
Yeah,
You know, you don't have to be Michelangelo to be in the art department. You don't have to be the greatest at anything. You just have a smattering of sort of skills and be interested. I mean, you have to be a little bit artistic and stuff. But there's plenty of people in the art department, and it's not just the art department, the prop department and the construction department. They're all one and the same thing.
yeah,
You can't, you know, draw a circle. But
yeah. That was a question that popped up there as well, Francis, about like how these people work in tandem together. So when you have like who's in charge of the props was a question.
well, what I'll do is I can run down the sort of roles in an art
Yeah,
department. Right?
that'd
So
be
at the
amazing.
top, you got the designer, the head of the department, so they're in charge. I'd be the second in command. Then under me in the office would be the assistant art director and the trainee art director. Then we usually have a graphic designer in the office as well, and possibly a drafts person. Now, that depends on the scale of the production. If it's a low budget or medium budget, I could be doing the graphics and I could be doing the drafting myself as well, or one of the assistants could be doing that. You know, you double up in sort of jobs. But in a perfect world, there are sort of main roles. And on the bigger shows, of course, you would have like a supervising art director, and then you'd have maybe 6 art directors under them, and then, you know, it just works down.
Yeah.
So you could have multiples of the same sort of role.
Okay.
Then within that same sort of office, you have the sort of what's called the set decorators department. So you have a set decorator. So the set decorator is similar sort of position to the art director in terms of their say in the show. They decorate the sets. They decide how we want to fill the sets. I mean, if I'm handling the sort of construction end of things, I'm just giving them an empty shell, and they come in and go, well, this is the furniture we need, this is what goes on the walls, you know, these are the props. So under them, they'd have a prop buyer who actually physically goes out and buys the props, and they'd have like a petty cash buyer, which would be their trainee or assistant,
Yeah.
out shopping basically. But again, on a smaller job, that could be one person representing that whole department, you know, so
Yeah.
they're just basically a buyer, sort of set decorator.
Yeah.
Then we have the prop department. So that the head of the department in that is the prop master. So they're in charge of the prop department, all the props. And the props are basically everything from the furniture to all the hand props, you know, to the dressing. And
Yeah.
the prop master will now have dressing prop people who, they're not glorified furniture movers, but they sort of are.
Yeah.
But they place everything in the set, and they strike the things and store them and put them away and stuff, and they move things. They're great people. Like.
Yeah.
And the best prop guys are the guys who've lots of skills. They can turn their hands at carpentry or painting as well and stuff like. They're the guys you want.
Yeah.
Not just somebody to move furniture, but somebody who can do all these different skills. So they're in my view, some of the most important people on the show, like the dress and prop guys.
Yeah.
Really, really important. They get the show done as far as I'm concerned. Like, 'cause otherwise it would be just being the designer in office, dreaming up ideas. They're the guys who actually put it into reality.
Yeah.
So under them you have the trainee props, and then you have model makers and stuff like that. So that's the prop department. Then on set when we're shooting, we'd have a standby art director, who's sort of my representative on set, or the art department's representative, keeping an eye on everything. They stand by the monitor with the director and just sort of make sure everything is right. You'd have a standby prop person, which is representing the prop department on the show, so they handle all the hand props with the actors, make sure things work. And then, of course, you have then trainees, hopefully. If you've got the money, you'd have a couple of trainees there to help people, help those guys. Excuse me. And then you have the construction department, which is one of the next biggest and most important jobs there, the construction manager, who takes my plans and actually physically builds them. So you have carpenters, painters, scenic painters, plasterers, and then riggers who put up scaffolding.
Whoa. This is already making out to be a massive team.
It can be. Like, I mean, I work in sort of medium budget TV, so our team is about 12 people in all, covering all those sort of departments. Of course, when we get to construction, that you could have 15, 20 people suddenly come in, but they wouldn't be on full time. They'd come in and they build their sets, and that's it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. And navigating that space as like somebody that will be, say, new to the art department, could possibly present a bit of a challenge trying to, I suppose, even confidence to be like, oh, I only have this amount of skills, or uncertain of the way it's paved. Would you have any advice for anybody starting off in that space?
Well, every job you'd want to have a few trainees in it. I mean, at least one trainee prop, one trainee art department. And those people can have no skills whatsoever. Like, they're there to learn. It's a learning situation. Every job I've done, I've learned something new, and everybody on the crew learns something new. That's what it's all about, like.
Yeah. So
they actively encourage to have people come in who know nothing, but are willing to learn. You just have to be really, really keen. Yeah. And just willing to do anything. We were talking about blagging earlier. I mean, you don't if you don't know how to do something, you don't lie about it. You say, I've encountered this thing before, but I don't really know my way around it. That's fine. Say that. That's fine, because like everybody working above you, like all the art directors or the construction people or the prop guys, they will show you how to do things. Yeah. That's the great thing about film crews. Very keen to share the skills.
Yeah, and not to like get into the nitty gritty of it, but I've even been in situations before. You don't know how to negate that space of saying like, I kind of know how to do it, but I don't really. I've never been in a position where I'm able to put on the table like I kind of know what I'm doing, because you feel like it's not the right impression. Is there a language or a way to present that to somebody? So I'm a trainee and I'm going to Francis to be like, I kind of know my way around the kind of the prop area.
You'd be found up if you get found out very, very quickly if you don't know what you're doing. Yeah. And there's no harm in admitting you don't know what you're doing, because people will find the time to sort of show you the ropes.
Yeah. And I suppose kind of honesty there, so you can get the best possible.
Honesty is the best policy, absolutely. Yeah. Now that's not to say that I haven't blagged, not lied, but blagged my way into jobs. Yeah. I have a little bit. But I made damn sure that like by the end of that job I knew my way around what it was I was meant to be doing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But you get found out very, very quickly.
Exposed.
Yeah.
There's a couple of questions here in chat that I'd love to bounce to. Adam had a really interesting one there. How do you deal with creating a set when the writer wants to create something from their childhood and memories if they can't articulate it well?
Well, it's our job then to sort of draw that information out of them, whether we show them sort of reference pictures or, try and recreate what it is on the page for them or in 3D or what have you. Our job is to eke that information out. Not all directors are the best communicators. You'd be surprised to hear. They really aren't. A lot of them aren't. Yeah. But it's our job to sort of draw that information out of them. But,
And I suppose those reference pictures, like you were saying, or even possibly scenes from other movies or TV shows as examples.
I do hate that, though.
Yeah.
Generally, we try and go to the source in terms of getting inspiration and stuff, so whether it's paintings or reference photography and stuff, rather than other films, because I did a job last year where the director, every scene, he had a reference from another film for it.
Oh.
Which is the worst situation in the world. You just try to steer them away from that, because, it's a filtering process where you're taking all these ideas in and stuff, and you're sort of drawing sort of ideas, and you're doing a bit of a collage. And if you're pulling a reference from another film, it's been filtered through somebody else's thought process, lens, exactly, and it's a diluted version of what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Or else you're trying to achieve somebody else's work that's already been done.
It's been done, like, there's no harm in stealing a few ideas now and again and stuff, but like just to slavishly follow something. Like if you go and say, I want to build a police station that looks like the police station in such and such a show, it's like, why? Let's go back, like they did their work, they researched, why don't we research, and we'll pull a few ideas from that, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you probably find that you you both may arrive at the same point, and you suddenly, well, the set looks like theirs and stuff. Well, you know, we did due diligence like they did, and we pulled in the same references and stuff. You know, so if you're creating a period set, they do tend to look sort of like, because you're all working off the same references, but they've been filtered through your personal tastes and choices and stuff. So which makes it better and makes it original.
Absolutely, it makes it much more better because it's what you've created, and it's, I suppose, it's a much more authentic piece by the end of it.
Yeah.
And how do you navigate that with the likes of maybe kind of difficult challenges presenting from not knowing how to art, and there might, like, not everybody, including myself, is a drawer. Like, I'm not the best artist, but if you're trying to translate a vision, because there could be directors in the space, what tips would you have for them of being able to curate their ideas rather than pulling from references?
I mean, the internet's a fantastic resource. Like, it's my first point of reference for anything. The first place okay, so I'll give you an example. So I'm building a sitting room from a house from the 1990s. It's probably a good example to bring up the Derry Girls set now.
Yeah, we'll throw up the Derry Girls set, if that's okay. The first of those images. And that was a question that was there earlier in the chat. I think it was Ethan had asked, when you're building something from another era.
Yeah.
It's an era that you've lived through, Francis, so it's slightly different, but how do you build resources for that? And you're probably going to talk about that now.
This is the first SketchUp model I ever built, and it's terrible. I look at it now and it's awful. It's very simplistic, but look, you have to start someplace. This is only 2-3 years ago. So that's the Derry Girls set. It had a very specific set of things needed for that set. The house was a 2 up, 2 down. We actually, when we designed this, we didn't have the exterior, so we had to sort of change things a little bit. So we go to the next picture,
next page.
You see some of the interiors, the finished set. So that's a house. We know the period. It's, you know, it's a working class home in Derry, 2 up, 2 down. Our set is actually scaled up a little bit, so no house is that big.
Yeah.
I mean, it plays on screen quite small, but at times there could be almost 10 cast in there. You know, you have the Derry Girls themselves and all their families, and then you'd have a crew, the same number of crew behind the camera. So the set had to be scaled up a little bit to accommodate all that.
That's something that actually came up this week as well, about being able to make a set or work within a space that you'd be able to get your full crew.
Oh, that's the dream, like, but the reality is, like, with budgets the way they are and stuff, and you know, you get to have to shoot in locations. But this because a lot of the show took place in the set, we actually built the set. All the other sets were the actual locations that we dressed for the period.
That's amazing. That's
so
really
if you
cool.
want to go on to the next thing.
I love Jesus on the wall there as well.
So this set, I mean, it's set in the mid-90s.
Yeah.
So the reference is all out there. Like, we brought in an awful lot of all the crew brought in sort of their own pictures from home and stuff like that.
No way.
Yeah.
That's such a personal touch.
And we also have a resource of, like, we have Argos catalogues going back to the 1970s, and so we flick through them and pick out items. Oh, let's find that item. So you go on eBay and you buy, you know, a set of crockery from the 1980s or something. That's how we.
That's so authentic.
Do sets.
And charity shops are.
Charity shops, yeah. A lot of the stuff in this set came from a charity shop. Charity shops. There's a great charity shop up north in Belfast it's like a warehouse, and they do home clearances and stuff.
That's so cool. And it's kind of like, I suppose, a process of upcycling and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, okay, so this set, it's set in the mid-90s, but if you look at anybody's home, there's stuff in your home that's 30, 40, 20 years old. You know what I mean? Yeah. So this, for me, I like this set because it tells a story. You can see, I mean, there's like pictures of the cast on the mantelpiece and stuff there. You know, there's the kids' toys, so you know they've got a little kid.
Yeah.
But that's, for me, was a very successful set.
It does make it feel very lived in as well.
Yes, yeah. The layers, the sort of detail, is great. If you go on to the next one, then I think you have the kitchen. I've forgotten what the original question about this was.
Oh, the question just was being able to curate a space.
Well, this, because, yeah, okay, so this isn't science fiction, this isn't fantasy, this is reality. So we're recreating reality down to the point where all the plugs and the practical lights in there, you can plug things into the sockets in the walls. You know, there's water in those taps. The fridge is always full of food when we're shooting. The presses are all cupboards. It's like a real home, but it's a set. But it's a real home, so the actors can go to the fridge, because the actors love to do that, a little bit of business, particularly when they've got so many cast. they're always sitting around the kitchen table. So they go to the fridge, get food, they start eating, they can go and get a plate, put it on a plate, cut, you know.
Yeah.
It's a working environment, like it's.
And you just wouldn't, like that just looks like a lived home.
Yeah.
And that's what you're looking for.
When you're standing in it, it's like a real house, and you stand looking at it, when you're in the space and you stand looking at it, you realise, well, you know, the ceilings are a little bit higher than they should be. But that's again to accommodate light and boom poles and stuff like that. You know, ceilings are usually 8 foot. This one is 9.5 foot, I think it is, possibly. You know, the rooms are maybe a metre or two bigger than they should be. But again, it's to accommodate the crew. But on camera, it plays like the real thing. There's
another question there that asks, would crew ever rob any props?
Yes. Particularly food.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can't leave any food lying around. Like you have to put lots of signs. Tell them to stop eating the food.
Do you have any props from any projects that you've been part of?
Probably, yeah. I think my house is full of little bits and pieces of quirky things that came from shows. Like.
Yeah, any examples?
I've got like a 4 foot high statue of Jesus in my living room beside my TV that came from some set somewhere.
You're just fond of it, it stays there.
Yeah, it looks great, like, yeah. And it's been in a few shows and stuff, like, yeah.
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
I think while we're talking about that one, it'd be cool to jump to the next. There's another set in there from Flatmates, which again is like a really kind of, in looking at the pictures, it gives a sense that like people live there and it's a lived space. How did you curate that, or where did you pull your ideas from that particular project?
So this is Flatmates is a BBC show. It's a sitcom, early 20s. It's a bit like Friends. They live in this big, spacious loft apartment in Manchester, but it's shot in Belfast.
Oh, really?
So again, it's a sort of an aspirational space. It's bigger than you'd expect it to be. I mean, the walls are 4 meters high or something. The space is nearly 12 meters deep. It's quite a big space. This actually shows you the layout. That's the grey area. Actually, is the studio floor.
Okay.
And there's a huge shortage of studio spaces in this country. So a lot of times you find that, particularly with low budget stuff, we're working out of spaces like this, or warehouses, or industrial units. That's an industrial unit. So the walls are that close to the walls of the set. I had to do this plan to work out where to put all the photo backings.
Yeah.
You see at the back there's a big 14-metre wide view of Manchester that you can see at the windows. So if you want to go on to the next still, you see the dress set itself.
And with those images of the backdrop itself, where do they come from?
That particular image came from a company in the UK that specialised in it. They large-scale photography of certain situations. The great thing about that backing is, on one side it's printed the daytime view, on the other side it's printed the nighttime view. So if you light it from the front, you get the daytime view. If you light it from the back, you'll get the nighttime view. Very expensive. It was nearly $6,000 for that. But it's like 14 metres across and 4.5 metres high. And at the end of the day, you can barely see it out of those back windows there. We ended up having to put blinds on the windows.
Wow, that's so cool. It's a very cool place to live if you were to live somewhere like that.
Well, that was the idea. It's like the Friends space.
Yeah.
The Friends set. It's aspirational. I think the line, when one of the characters comes into it the first time, goes, just like, it's an amazing space, I want to live here. And she ends up living there, and they become flatmates, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So you just want to cycle through the images there, get a sense of it. And this set is still standing in that studio space, and we're going back next month to do the second series. So it's perfect for COVID because it's a studio space. 60% of the show is shot in this set, and there's only 4 main cast, so it's perfect. Yeah. We were meant to be doing Dairy Girls at the moment, but because of COVID and because of the content of the scripts, there was no way we were going to be able to do those without compromising what they wanted to do. So that's been pushed to next year now, which is perfect for me because I can do this show, I can do this series, and then I can do Dairy Girls. So then I'm sort of set.
And how do you overlay that? Have you ever been put in a predicament of having to choose between 2 projects that you really want to work on?
Rarely.
Yeah.
But as I said earlier, a friend of mine says, in film you take the first bus that comes along. You can't hold out for Ridley Scott to call you.
Yeah.
You know, so sometimes you do kick yourself because you've just taken one job, but an even better one has come along. But
yeah,
there is people who jump like human fleas from jobs to job, and they get themselves an awful reputation for not finishing jobs.
Okay.
You don't want to be that person. You don't want to be the human flea.
You want to see things to completion.
Yeah, exactly. So that, I mean, it comes down to what we were saying earlier, that you find you may not be particularly into the job, or it may not be paying particularly well, but look, you've committed and you've signed a contract, you stick to it, and you find something within that job, whether it's picking up a new skill or working with some new people.
Yeah.
That'll see you through the job. Like.
Yeah. There's a question here from Luke about what was the toughest part of building that flatmate set that you're going back to?
Who's that?
Luke and Kerry.
We had 5 weeks prep on that job to build that set.
Whoa.
So the carpenter started building the set on day 2 or day 3. I didn't finish drawing the plans until day 7. So as I was drawing the set, they were building the wall. Sometimes they were ahead of me, sometimes I was ahead of them. So they'd be coming up to my office as I was drawing, going, you know, what's the next piece? Where's that window go? Where's that door go?
Is that not extremely intense?
Yes, that's a crazy way of working, but it's just the way that schedule was.
Yeah.
It was a very ambitious set, and there was not interference, but there was an awful lot of input coming from executive producers in the BBC about what they wanted, so we repainted walls several times. So
Will there be that amount of, like, they wouldn't like the colour of the wall?
Oh yeah, that took ages to get decided. And all the time, that schedule is fast approaching. That day, first day of the shoot is fast approaching. So, you know, the day before.
Oh my word.
Actually, that situation, we had the set dressed, and then the last thing to do, we had to polish the studio floor, because we shot in this space because it had this polished concrete floor, but there was paint all over it.
Okay.
And we couldn't get the painters booked to do it until the day before we started shooting.
Oh.
So we had to dress the set, photograph it, take everything off the floor, get the guys in that night to polish the studio floor, and then we had to redress it for the next day's shoot.
Holy Moses.
Crazy, yeah. But like we have a fantastic team, like a really good team, and a good team can just pivot on a pin and just make things happen very, very quickly.
A very quick turnaround.
Yeah, I mean the crew I've been working for about 10 years, and we have a shorthand and we know each other very well and stuff. We work really well together, so we can sort of accomplish those things. Yeah, which is great.
There's another question here about, have you ever shot on a non-studio warehouse location, or has everything been in a studio of some kind?
How do you mean now? Building sets?
So, like actually shooting, like, I think the question is around on location.
Oh yeah. Most shows are done on location, like, yeah.
Yeah. Is there a couple of examples of those that you could talk about?
Actually, I should have brought some pictures, but I didn't. Yeah, I mean, the best way to describe the art department, what we do is if you're watching any TV show or film, if you take the actors out of a shot, we're responsible for everything else you see. So it's not just sets. It's like, you know, vehicles, cars. If you're shooting in the field and there's a cow standing in the field, if that's what the script requires, we get the cow. You know?
Where do you get the cows from?
You know, we're responsible for the length of the grass. You know, if they want a meadow, well, then we have to make sure that grass grows to a certain height. You know what I mean? We're responsible for everything you see. So sets is one part of it. You know, most shows I do, we don't have the luxury building sets. We have to shoot on location. Yeah. So.
And it seems like you'd have to know an awful lot of people. Say, for example, if you're on location, you need cows, you need a certain type of grass, you need a certain type of height.
Well, that's where the set decorator or buyers come into their own, because they're the people with all those contacts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will they be on like a list of contacts?
Yeah, I mean, the more shows you do, the more contacts you make. Like, you come across people who do all sorts of different skills. Like, and you got to remember, so maybe a dozen people in the department, like, and I could be scratching my head. Last job, actually, I had to get a British Army helicopter tail fin out into the sea. You know, the tide goes out, and there's just this. Supposedly, it's crashed. It's the dream sequence or something. So this tail wing, whatever it is sticking out of the ground. Where would you get one of those? British Army helicopter. Just that portion of it. So, did the AD go, oh, my uncle's got one of those.
Did these people just have all these props in their houses?
Yeah. No, he did bring in the propeller, and it was the wrong type. We ended up having to build it from scratch. Okay. In the end. And then, it wasn't filmed as it was designed to be filmed in the end, which is another story I won't go into. But it was a fantastic prop. It was one of those from the day one, we're scratching our heads. Where are we going to get a British Army helicopter from the 1980s, just the tail end of it? Yeah. And actually be able to plant it out into the middle of the sea. But we did. And
do those challenges excite you?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. And scare you, though, as well. Yeah. Because it's not just that one thing. There's like 120 other problems that need to be sorted by next week.
That's just one of the interesting ones that are sticking out.
But, you know, it's like it's almost easier to get a newspaper from 100 years ago than from one from last week or yesterday's newspaper. Like, but, you know, sometimes we're called upon to do that. Yeah. You know, but, you know, there's ways and means.
Ways and means.
Money solves an awful lot of problems. A lot of times you don't have the money. But like, so when you reach a situation where there's something you just can't get sorted one way or the other, you throw money in until it gets sorted. There's fantastic prop stores in the UK. They have everything.
Yeah.
It just costs a lot of money to get that stuff over here. You know, there's a few prop stores here. They're not the best.
Yeah.
I mean, they're grand, like, but they're not. We don't have the resources that they have in the UK. So a lot of times you're blagging things. Dundeal's a great resource.
Yeah.
I mean, the kitchen set in kitchen units in Dairy Girls came from Dundeal. I came across that. Somebody was chucking them out.
There you are. Came across it. And would you have any tips, say, for the young people watching who are making their own films now and they're like, ooh, I don't have the money and I can't be getting things shipped from England. What would
It's not like in my day, and it sounds terrible like this, but if everybody's got a phone, you can film a movie on a phone in 4K now. Like, that's unheard of when I was growing up. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was just something that just wasn't available to us. Like, we had to go to college. And when I went to Dún Laoghaire Art College, there was one film camera there, and that was it. I mean, now they've got all sorts of equipment.
Yeah.
But we had one film camera between 15 of us, 15 in my class, and there was another 2 or 3 years as well, all vying for the same equipment. So,
all eyeing it up. And for like the side of like props and locations and setting, designing your sets, what would you have any advice there in starting off and making those spaces come alive?
How do you mean now? I mean, give us an example.
So, I'm making a short film next week.
Now, I'm going to have to charge you a consultant fee now.
But I don't have a very small budget,
Right.
and I just want to get a few friends together to do it. So would you just recommend popping into charity shops and even
Absolutely, yes, sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're supposedly in the professional realm where we're getting paid to do what we do, but we still do I still do what I did when I was making short films in college.
Yeah.
You go to charity shops. You go to people's houses. Like, my parents I'm forever raiding their house for bits and pieces, and my own home as well.
Yeah.
We still do the same things that we always did. Like, it's just that we have a little bit of money behind us and stuff. But like, you know, usually we have to spend that money on other things.
Yeah.
So yeah, we still blag stuff. I won't say steal, but next to steal. I mean, it was in the field. Nobody wanted it. Like, so, but, you know, skips. I know one production designer who can't pass a skip without stopping his car and jumping in and seeing what's in there.
Absolutely, I'm all about that.
And everybody in the art department seems to have a shed or a store where they keep little bits of interest and bits and pieces and stuff. So yeah, it's no different to people making their own home movies.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's, Jaren had to ask, is there a rule for actors to strictly not touch props on set? Because I know sometimes props can be misplaced.
Yeah, actors are awful people for putting things into their pockets and going back to makeup and you chase. I mean, I did a show in Morocco a couple of years ago. It was a biblical thing called Killing Jesus for Scott Free were producing it. Really, Scott was producing it. But Jesus went off the crown of thorns one day, and I was beside myself because it was an expensive thing. It was a custom-made thing that had all blood tubes in it, so you could press a button and blood would come out through the thorns.
Holy Moses.
Anyway, he disappeared with it off to makeup. I was back in the hotel, pulling my head off, going like, how am I going to explain that this thing has now disappeared? The makeup person came up and said, look, there's your crown of thorns. But actors are notorious for doing that. But actors are professionals as well. They know not to move things for continuity when they're on the set. But they just occasionally, if they're wearing props, excuse me, or carrying things in their pockets, they tend to wander off the set with them. Yeah.
And I suppose another one, like even like costumes, like charity shops are fantastic for costumes as well. And we have basically all of our costume department is all donated from old productions and the
most costume stores in the world, that's where they it's it's unwanted items. That's where they come from. They're not actually made. I mean, if you look at the costumes in the Dairy Girls, they're not made. They're actually period costumes that come from the period.
Is that the case with the uniforms?
I think we shot in an actual school, so to save money, they used the actual uniform that was in that school. We just changed the badge.
Cool.
So if you look closely in the wide scenes, some of the girls don't have the same badge.
Oh.
So the actors are wearing the school uniform to that particular school because to save money.
Yeah.
So that's where that comes about.
Deadly. And would you have any, because we're coming towards the end, any kind of tips that like if you could go back and speak to your past self?
Learn to drive. Seriously.
Get on the road.
Get on the road. Like I always felt I was 10 years behind everybody else doing all things.
Yeah.
But I was 10 years behind everybody else getting on the road.
Yeah, I remember my dad turned around to me and he said, like, Hector only learned how to drive when he was 40. And I was like, well, I can't wait that long.
Yeah, no, drive. And listen, I know, look, driving is very, very expensive. You can't, it's not the end of the world, but as soon as you can.
Yeah, it just helps with the role itself.
It does, yeah.
The
You're
job
instantly
at hand.
hireable, in my eyes, if you can drive. Doesn't matter what skills you have. If you come to me as a trainee and you can drive.
Yeah.
I had a job last year and there was like 15 people applied for the role and stuff, and the person I got was the person who could drive. Nobody else could drive.
Yeah.
And they weren't necessarily the best person for the role, but they could drive. And they were fantastic afterwards. They really were good, like. But.
Yeah. Would you have, we did mention this later, and I think your answer was particularly good, especially from conversations we've had in the past week. But I had asked you, what do you do when you come in contact with like a creative block, or can't think of any more ideas?
Well, the good thing about the arts round, you're not on your own. You know, there's half a dozen other people in the same office with you possibly. So, you know, they'll throw in an idea. Somebody will always have an idea. You know.
Yeah. It's an open space.
Yeah, and the internet is a fantastic resource and stuff. Like, and I'm just looking at pictures or doing a little bit of research, it'll kickstart an idea. You know, sometimes I'll be researching one thing and I'll get an idea for something else.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say when I'm working with graphic designers, like, that, like, the design you're working on now isn't necessarily what it's going to be, but it's kickstarting the idea for the next design you're going to do, if you get me, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
We always like make sure we like do, most art artists do have a gallery sort of situation where all the work goes up on the wall, because somebody will see something from one picture and it'll feed an idea for something else, so things change. So it's an organic process. And
it's collaborative, it's kind of...
And luckily, there's enough people out there, so if you feel you've run out of ideas, somebody will have an idea.
Yeah. And alongside that, I think, like, I'd asked you earlier if there was a moment that if you didn't laugh, you'd cry. Is there anything that sticks out in mind as regards to an experience or an old anecdote?
God. It's like every day in the job. No, when I first started, I was working on Braveheart. I mean, it's not to do with the art department, like, but anyway, I was working on Braveheart. And I was doing video assist at the time, which is, you know, taking the feed from the video camera.
Yeah.
And it was the last couple of days of the shoot, and they were just mopping up the show, just like there was like 6 units working or something. We were all grabbing different shots just to, you know, put together the jigsaw that the film finally becomes.
Yeah.
And if you remember in the film, there's one of the final scenes where he gets beheaded, and he's lying down and gets beheaded, and he's got a rag in his hand and he drops it, and it falls towards camera in slow motion, flutters down, lands on the lens. So I was working with the unit, and we spent the whole afternoon trying to get that shot. I was doing the video assist rig, and it was a high-speed camera, so I had this high-speed rig that came over from London, very expensive piece of equipment. This is recording something like 100 frames or 400 frames.
I'm nervous.
Or a minute or a second, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So we spent the whole afternoon just dropping this rag onto the lens, trying to get it right, and it only landed on the lens right once. So the AD told me, right, line up that piece of tape. No, this is just video assist, it's not the film, so it's not as bad as it sounds like, but I felt it was bad. So I lined up the right completed take and said, look, we'll bring the thing into the studio and show Mel, like, when he's finished with his shot, show him what we got. We spent the whole afternoon doing, so I roll it in. And just as I roll in, one of the ADs comes over, oh, Mel's up on his horse doing this scene where he swings this, and it's slow motion, let's use your rig to record it. So yeah, hit record, and I taped over the only good take I got.
A moment where you're like, I'm done, I need to go.
Yeah, well, Mel Gibson comes over and he goes, all right, so show Mel like what we did this afternoon. I go, I played the shot we just did. And he said, but we just filmed that. Where's the tape from outside? Oh, I taped over it. And he goes, well, was it any good? And I go, it was all right. And he goes, well, that's good enough. Wandered off.
Well, there you go. I think that's a good.
But it was a learning experience for me.
Yes,
like, yeah.
Always learning.
Yeah, don't tape over what you just recorded.
If in doubt, try avoid. Good. I just want to say a huge thank you from ourselves and all the young people. There's loads of comments and I've been like, oh my God, imagine.
I've got worse stories, but I'm not going to tell them.
We don't even have the time for it today, but you'll probably have to come back and tell them another time. Thank you so much from everybody in Young Irish Filmmakers and from all the young people watching. A huge thank you for your wisdom and your stories and the kind of the knowledge you've imparted. So a huge thank you. And we'll just wave goodbye.
Cheers. Bye now.
Bye.